He stood under a flickering streetlight, rain running down the creases of his weathered face, boots soaked, coat frayed. The glow of the city blurred around him like a memory he couldn't quite hold on to. This was the same man who once led a convoy through desert heat, who once carried a wounded comrade on his back, who once saluted a flag at dawn. Now he was just another silhouette on a forgotten street. People passed without looking. A businessman hurried by with an umbrella, the scent of expensive cologne in his wake. A mother tugged her child closer. A bus hissed to a stop and roared off again. Nobody knew his name. Nobody wanted to know. Yet in his pocket, folded and worn, was a photograph of himself in uniform. Grinning, strong, alive. His name was Daniel Carter. He had enlisted at 19, leaving behind a small town and a fiancée who promised to wait. In the service, he found brotherhood, purpose, a sense of being part of something larger. He came home with medals pinned to his chest and scars invisible to everyone but himself. Night after night, the images replayed. The sandstorm swallowing the horizon, the echo of an explosion, the last look of a friend he couldn't save. "I thought coming home would be the easy part," he murmured once, sitting alone on a park bench. "I thought the hard part was over." But the welcome he imagined never came. He applied for jobs, security guard, warehouse worker, anything, but the interviews were awkward. His hands trembled. He avoided eye contact. More than once, the hiring manager glanced at his discharge papers and muttered about adjustment issues. Weeks turned to months. Savings ran out. Rent fell behind. One cold December morning, an eviction notice fluttered on his door. He packed what he could in a duffel bag. The rest, his furniture, his TV, the little wooden box with his medals, went into storage or the trash. He found a cot at a shelter, but the lights never dimmed and the smell of disinfectant mixed with sweat kept him awake. Men cried out in their sleep. Sometimes he woke standing, ready to fight. Sometimes he woke weeping. On the street, he moved like a ghost. He learned which soup kitchens offered coffee. He learned which church steps were safe to sit on without being chased away. He learned to pull his hood low to hide his face. More than once, he heard a passerby say, "Get a job," under their breath. He wanted to scream, "I had a job. I wore the uniform. I bled for you." One evening, he ducked into the corner of a library just to get warm. The hum of fluorescent lights, the smell of paper, the quiet rows of books gave him a strange comfort. He opened a computer and tried again to fill out VA forms, the cursor blinking like an impatient heartbeat. He didn't know which boxes to tick. He didn't know which documents had been lost in transit. The system spoke in codes he couldn't decipher. An older librarian approached. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. He swallowed. "I'm trying to get benefits. They keep saying I'm missing paperwork." She offered a small, sad smile. "That happens a lot. There's an outreach office down the street. Maybe they can help." He nodded but didn't go. He had already been to 3 offices, waited hours, been told to call another number. The walls of bureaucracy felt higher than any barrier he'd faced overseas. He told himself he'd try again tomorrow. Tomorrow always felt a little further away. Nights were the worst. The city's noise thinned out after midnight, leaving sirens in the distance and the occasional rumble of a train. He lay curled under a thin blanket, feeling every ache in his joints, listening to the echo of his own breath. Sometimes he whispered the names of fallen friends. Sometimes he prayed, though he wasn't sure who to. It was during one of these nights, huddled near a subway vent, that a young volunteer named Elena noticed him. She was carrying a bag of sandwiches and a clipboard for a local nonprofit. She crouched down, rain dripping from her coat. "Hey," she said softly, "are you hungry?" He hesitated, pride warring with hunger. "I'm fine," he muttered. She set the sandwich down anyway. "I work with a veteran support group. We have a meeting tomorrow. Free coffee, no pressure." "You're welcome." He stared at her. In her eyes he saw no pity, only concern. He wanted to believe her. "Maybe," he said. She handed him a card. "My name's Elena. Call me if you want, even if it's just to talk." When she walked away, he held the card like a fragile lifeline. For the first time in months, he felt something stir inside him. Not hope exactly, but the faint memory of it. The next day, he almost threw the card away. What could they really do? Another waiting room, another lecture about personal responsibility. But a gust of wind snatched the card from his hand and blew it a few steps ahead. He chased it, caught it, stood there breathing hard. Maybe, he thought, just maybe. Later, sitting on a cracked concrete step, he dialed the number with shaking fingers. A calm voice answered. "Veteran Outreach, this is Elena." He almost hung up. Instead he said, "This is Daniel, from last night." "I'm so glad you called," she said. "Come by. We'll figure something out together." As he walked toward the address she'd given him, the city looked a little different. The same gray sky, the same crowded sidewalks. But somewhere, a door was opening. He wasn't sure what waited on the other side. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he might be walking toward something, not just away. Daniel hesitated at the doorway of the outreach center. The sign was modest, paint peeling, a small flag hanging above it. Inside, the smell of coffee and printer paper mixed with the soft murmur of voices. He almost turned back, but Elena appeared from behind a counter, waving him in with a smile that felt steady and real. "Daniel," she said, like she'd known him longer than a single night. "Come on, let's sit." He followed her to a corner with 2 worn chairs and a small table stacked with pamphlets. Through a window he could see other veterans, some in baseball caps, some with canes, some staring at their hands. He realized suddenly he wasn't the only one. The thought was both comforting and terrifying. Elena slid a mug of coffee toward him. "No forms right now," she said. "Just tell me what's been going on." He stared into the dark liquid. "I lost my apartment. I can't seem to get through to anyone. I don't sleep." She nodded, not interrupting. He took a shaky breath. "I thought if I served my country would be there for me." Elena leaned forward. "You're not wrong to think that, but the system is broken. We can work through it, one step at a time." He looked up at her. "I don't even know where to start." "Start here," she said. "With us." Over the next weeks, Daniel began showing up at the center. At first he came for the free meals, then for the company. He met other veterans. Marcus, who lost a leg in Iraq. Luis, who battled nightmares so fierce he couldn't hold a job. Denise, who'd been homeless with her 2 kids before finding housing. Their stories spilled out like a river of shared pain. One afternoon, Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "It's not weakness to need help," he said. "We all do." Daniel's throat tightened. "Feels like I'm broken." Marcus shook his head. "You're alive. That's not broken. That's surviving." Elena began helping Daniel navigate the paperwork. She set up appointments with VA caseworkers, called offices on his behalf, taught him which forms to submit, which codes to use. They spent hours in waiting rooms with flickering televisions playing muted news reports about war zones that looked too familiar. Sometimes he wanted to give up. Once he threw a rejection letter across the room, his hands trembling with rage. "They don't care," he shouted. "I don't matter." Elena picked up the letter quietly. "You do matter, and we're going to keep going until they see it." Another day, on a park bench outside the center, Daniel confessed, "I still hear it, the blast, the screaming. It's like I never left." Elena said softly, "Have you ever talked to someone about it? A counselor?" He shrugged. "Didn't think it would help." "Would you try?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Maybe." The first therapy session was awkward. The room too bright. The counselor's pen scratching across paper. Daniel sat with his hands clenched. "I don't even know where to begin," he muttered. "Begin anywhere," the counselor said. So he began. At first a trickle, then a flood. The patrol gone wrong, the radio static, the blood on his hands. He wept without sound. When it was over, the counselor handed him tissues. "You've been carrying this alone for too long," she said. Walking out of that office, the winter sun felt a little less cold on his face. Weeks turned into months. Small victories began to accumulate. An approved disability claim, a referral for housing, a voucher for groceries. Elena celebrated each one like a milestone. "See," she'd say, "we're getting somewhere." He still had dark nights. Some mornings he couldn't leave his cot. But there was a shift, subtle at first. He started helping set up chairs at meetings, handing coffee to new arrivals, listening when they spoke. For the first time since he'd come home, he was part of something again. One evening, as the center closed, Daniel lingered. "Why do you do this?" he asked Elena. She shrugged. "My brother served. He didn't make it. This is my way of honoring him." Daniel nodded, throat tight. "You're making a difference." "So are you," she said. "Look around. You've become someone the new guys look up to." He blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you." Later that night, lying on a cot, Daniel thought about her words. He remembered Marcus's hand on his shoulder. He remembered the counselor's steady voice. Something inside him, long buried under rubble and shame, stirred like a seed pushing through soil. Maybe, just maybe, he could grow again. He picked up his phone and called his sister back home. They hadn't spoken in years. When she answered, her voice cracked. "Danny? Is it really you?" "It's me," he said softly. "I'm trying to get better." They talked for an hour. When he hung up, he felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the thin blanket around him. He wasn't fixed, but he wasn't alone. Spring arrived slowly in the city. Patches of sunlight stretched across the sidewalks where Daniel once curled up to sleep. He still walked with his shoulders slightly hunched, but there was a steadiness to his steps now, a destination instead of a drift. In his pocket rattled a new set of keys, small, ordinary, but heavy with meaning. The apartment was nothing fancy. A one-bedroom in an aging brick building with creaky pipes and a window that stuck when you tried to open it. But it was his. He stood in the middle of the bare living room the day he moved in, inhaling the smell of fresh paint and old wood. "Home," he whispered, testing the word like an unfamiliar taste. Elena helped him move a second-hand couch up the stairs. Marcus brought a small television. Luis dropped off a coffee maker. "Every soldier needs coffee," he said with a grin. The apartment filled with mismatched pieces of kindness. On the wall, Daniel pinned the photo of his squad, and next to it, a paper sign Elena had made. "Welcome home." He started attending therapy regularly. Some sessions cracked him open, some left him exhausted, but little by little the nightmares loosened their grip. He learned to breathe through the flashbacks, to call someone instead of isolating, to write in a journal when words wouldn't come out loud. The counselor told him, "Healing isn't a straight line. It's a road with switchbacks, but you're walking it." One morning, Daniel woke before dawn and found himself lacing his shoes without thinking. He jogged around the block, lungs burning, but the rhythm felt good. For the first time in years, he was doing something for his body instead of against it. He also began volunteering at the outreach center. At first it was simple tasks, handing out flyers, making coffee, but soon he found himself sitting with new arrivals, listening the way others had listened to him. "I know what it's like," he'd tell them quietly. "You're not alone." The look in their eyes when they realized he understood lit something inside him. One rainy evening, a young vet named Chris came in, trembling the way Daniel had months before. He sat across from Daniel, eyes downcast. "I can't do this anymore," Chris muttered. Daniel leaned forward. "You can. You just need someone to fight alongside you." He slid a cup of coffee across the table, the gesture echoing Elena's first act of kindness. In that moment, Daniel understood. His pain had become a bridge. With Elena's encouragement, he started speaking at small community meetings about veterans' issues: housing, mental health, employment. His voice shook at first, but the room listened. He told his story not as a plea but as a witness. "We risked everything out there," he said once. "Don't let us lose everything in here." After one talk, a local business owner approached him. "I had no idea," she said. "We want to hire veterans. Could you help us understand their needs?" Daniel agreed, realizing advocacy could be more than words. It could open doors. He reconnected with his sister, visiting her and her children one weekend. Sitting at her kitchen table, he showed the kids his medals. "These aren't just for fighting," he told them. "They're for surviving." The younger one slipped the ribbon over his neck. "You're a hero," she said. Daniel swallowed hard. "I'm just your uncle," he replied, but in his chest something like pride rose up. Not the old brittle pride, but a softer, steadier one. Even on hard days, when memories clawed back or paperwork stalled, Daniel no longer saw himself as lost. He was a man rebuilding, a veteran reclaiming his name, a voice among many demanding better. Summer heat shimmered on the pavement the day Daniel stood at a podium for the first time. The event was small, a town hall meeting in a modest community center, but to him it felt as significant as any parade ground. Rows of folding chairs held veterans, social workers, local officials, students. Elena sat in the front row, smiling encouragement. Marcus raised a hand in a quiet salute. Daniel cleared his throat. "A few years ago," he began, "I was sleeping under a bridge less than a mile from here. People walked by. I was invisible, but I had served this country. I had fought for the person walking past me. And yet, when I came home, there was no one waiting." He paused, letting the words settle. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner, the faint shuffle of someone's feet. "What saved me," he continued, "wasn't a program or a policy. It was a person. Someone who looked at me and said, 'You matter,' and then backed up those words with action. We need systems that work, yes, but we also need people who care." A veteran in the second row wiped his eyes. A social worker scribbled notes. A teenager in the back sat up straighter. Daniel spoke about the outreach center, about therapy, about the nights when he thought he wouldn't see morning and the mornings when he did. He ended with a simple plea. Don't just thank veterans for their service. Stand with them when they come home. When he stepped down, people lined up to shake his hand. Some whispered thank yous. Others asked how they could help. He realized this was how change began. One story at a time, cracking open hearts. Later that evening, he walked back to his apartment, keys jingling in his pocket. He opened the door to the small living room where the photo of his squad hung on the wall. The setting sun cast a warm glow across it, and for the first time in years, he felt at peace with the man in the picture. He picked up the phone and left a voicemail for Chris, the young vet he'd helped. "Just checking in," he said. "Remember, you're not alone." Hanging up, he sat quietly, breathing in the scent of coffee brewing in his kitchen, the sound of children playing outside. Ordinary life reclaimed. And here is the truth his journey had taught him. A war hero forced into homelessness is not a personal failure. It is a mirror held up to society. It shows where compassion frays, where systems break, where promises go unkept. Every veteran on a sidewalk is a story waiting to be heard. A life that still has worth. A human being who once swore an oath to protect strangers. If you're watching this, remember Daniel. Remember that beneath the ragged coats and the silent eyes are people who have carried burdens you may never see. A single act of kindness, a cup of coffee, a phone call, a chance, can be the spark that turns despair into a path back home. We can do better. We must do better. Not just with policies, but with our hearts, our voices, our hands. Because no one who has stood in harm's way should ever come home to nothing. If Daniel's story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it. Talk about it. Support a veteran in your community. Advocate for stronger programs and hold leaders accountable. And here on this channel, join us in telling these stories. Like this video if it touched you. Comment below with your thoughts or experiences. Subscribe if you want to hear more voices like Daniel's. Reflect. Share. Together, we can make sure no veteran is invisible, and every hero has a homecoming worthy of the name. Weeks after that town hall meeting, Daniel found himself standing outside the outreach center again, watching a small crowd gather for a candlelight vigil. Each candle represented a veteran lost not in combat, but to homelessness, addiction, or despair after service. The flames flickered in the dusk, tiny points of light against the darkening sky. Daniel held his own candle, fingers steady, and whispered the names of friends who never made it back. A reporter approached him quietly. "Why do you keep telling your story?" she asked. Daniel looked at the flames. Because silence is what got us here. Because if one more person listens, one more life might be saved. He walked to the edge of the crowd and spoke again, not through a microphone this time, but directly to the faces in front of him. This isn't about charity, he said softly. It's about justice, about giving back to the people who already gave everything. The crowd nodded, some wiping tears, some holding their candles a little higher. In that moment, Daniel understood that his pain had turned into a movement, not loud or grand, but steady, like a drumbeat in the dark. Each story told, each act of kindness, each policy changed was another step toward a world where veterans aren't left behind. He blew out his candle, but the glow remained inside him. Turning to Elena, he said, "We're not done yet." She smiled. "No," she replied. "We're just getting started."